Excuse me, Pastor, I was taught that the Egyptians were pagans. They weren't pagans?
No, in fact, the word pagan is the problem. When you look up in any dictionary, you'll get a poor definition of the word pagan. They usually identify pagan with anybody who is a non-Christian, a heathenist, a non-Muslim, or non-Jew. And that's not what the word means. You have to look into the Latin of the word. Middle English, from the late Latin, gives you the word paganus. And that word comes from country dweller or civilian. From pagus, meaning country or rural or district. It has nothing whatsoever to do with a person's religious beliefs or practices. This quite often in this country, in English, words are thrown around to confuse people. So immediately you hear somebody say Egyptians worship statues or idols, and they'll show you a bunch of dog-headed creatures and bull-headed creatures and bird-headed creatures, and immediately run out and say, see, that's paganism. And then when you start seeing descending doves on the cathedral walls or in the stained glass, when you see Christ riding an ass, and they'll identify that icon as a form of paganism. In the Judean doctrine, they use the word goyim, which meant a Gentile, someone who is not a reader of the Tanakh or the Torah. And that translates again as a form of paganism to them. But it's the wrong meaning and has nothing whatsoever to do with the Bible. There's no, the Egyptians were not pagans, other than the fact that they lived in the rural area. They lived in the deserts. They lived along the Nile, and that can apply to us down in Georgia or us down in small cities versus those living up in Atlanta or up in New York or in Chicago or in California, in those cities, those melting pots of evil like Sodom and Gomorrah. We would therefore, by the definition in the dictionary, be pagan, but it had nothing to do with our religious belief or the doctrine or the practices under which we live. Okay?
So paganism has nothing to do with animal worship?
Paganism has nothing whatsoever to do with animal worship according to a dictionary and a definition, right? But according to religious fanatics who want to stamp certain stereotypes on people because they can't explain certain facts that they have to deal with. When you get into the Bible, for instance, you have to deal with the fact that the word for Egypt is Mizraim. Right? And that word, can you trace that name out in Genesis from son to father, from son to father, from father to son, and father to son? You're going to find, like I said earlier, that the Egyptians themselves are in fact of the blood of God. If you go from God or the Elohim to Yahweh according to the Bible in Genesis, by the time you get down past Adam and Eve, and then you get down to that third son, Seth, and then from Seth, the next most prominent character becomes Enoch, and then the next most prominent character becomes Noah of the flood, and then the next most prominent character becomes Abraham, where you go between Abraham and Noah, and you end up in Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. And it says there, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. When you get to that son, Mizraim to them was an Egyptian. Now, how about Ham? The Egyptians have a word called Ham, means black skin or dark people. Now, many people refer to ancient Egypt as Kemet. Many people refer to blacks in America in a derogatory way years ago as a cursed seed of Ham. They were saying the blacks were cursed and their lips became big and hair became nappy by the curse, and that's recognized out of Genesis 9:25. But you don't find it mentioning a curse on Ham. It says curse be Canaan, which is a son of Ham. But now when you go into the Bible, you look again into Psalms 105. Can someone read that? 105 verse 23.
Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham.
Right in that verse, you got that Israel came into Egypt. If you look into the Hebrew there, you find the word Mitzrayim. And then he said what? Read the verse again.
Israel also came into Egypt,
Mizraim,
and Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham.
So Ham and Mizraim are the same people. And that goes back to Genesis chapter 10 verse 6 again. And the sons of Ham are Cush. Cush is Ethiopia. And Mizraim, Egypt. And Phut, Libya. And Canaan. And Ham is right there. Ham is the father of this seed. So if Ham fathered the Egyptians, and Noah, who God chose as a family to survive the flood, who God said should be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth again.
9:1.
Noah, who we learn the story of the ark and all the animals, God spoke directly to Noah, and Noah's son was Ham. And Ham fathered Mizraim. That puts the Mizraimites or the Egyptians and the Hamites and the Cushites and the Ethiopians and the original Libyans, not the ones that's in Libya now who are Italians who invaded, but the dark-skinned, woolly-haired original inhabitants of that land. That makes them the seed of God. That makes them of the blood of God. That makes them when God said, I created man in my image and after my likeness. And we go back to Genesis chapter 2, we find the word Ethiopia inside
Verse
there
13.
as the place where God said the best gold came out of. That said, these people, these Ethiopians, these Egyptians, these Mizraimites, these Cushites, these Foothites, these were all dark-skinned, woolly-haired people. These were Negro people, and they were the blood of God. Stay on the facts. Look at the Bible. Look into the Bible. Look into the words of the Bible. Look into it word by word. Translate it. Get dictionaries, encyclopedias. Go into the computer. Get Logos Bible, online Bible, and look for yourself. And let the Bible speak to you, directly to you, so you're in communion with God yourself. And you won't have the problem of thinking those Egyptians were other than the Hebrews or other than the Israelites. Because as we explained earlier, Hebrews was not a tribe or a race or a religion. Hebrew was an act. The man who founded Hebrews called Abraham. His real name was Abram. It's in the Bible. His name was changed to Abraham.
In Genesis 17:5.
And he was a Chaldean. So they changed his name so you wouldn't trace it back to a Chaldean name. The Chaldeans' language was a form of cuneiform. Cuneiform is a wedge script, a hieroglyphic script, which they found in ancient Egypt first. When God took Adam and moved him eastward into the garden, he was moving him out of Africa and over into Asia, over into Jerusalem. So you can say Jerusalem is the mother of us all. Yes, because that's where you germinated your religious beliefs. But your seed originated in Africa, and the intellect of the world is founded in ancient Egypt. The Babylonian deities Tammuz that you find mentioned in the books of Ezekiel, where the children of the women of Israel go out and praise and call on this Sumerian deity, was a link directly to Anu. And Anu from the Egyptian is Anu with two N's, and it comes from Heliopolis, the city of the sun. So our acknowledgement and our sense of reality tells us that the deity we've been worshiping as the Most High God, Elyon El, the Most High or the highest, is none other than Re, or the sun, called Shemesh in ancient Babylon, called Re in ancient Egypt, and we say sun in Malachi, the sun of righteousness, S-U-N, giving warmth, giving life, giving vitality, the sustainer. That was the symbol that God represented as a circle in his eye, as the all-seeing eye who looks down over all humanity. The sun is not God. The sun is one of God's creations that represent the power of God.